What happens when your doctor tells you nothing is wrong for 7 years and you know deep in your body that everything is? Today's guest, Risa August, knows that feeling intimately. An Ironman athlete and fiercely driven woman, Risa spent 7 years being dismissed by her doctor before finally demanding an MRI herself. And what they found was a large tumour on her pituitary gland and a rare condition called acromegaly that had been quietly reshaping her body for years. What followed was brain surgery, radiation, lifelong medication, and then just 6 months post-op, Risa signed up to cycle 1,845 miles from Canada to Mexico down the Pacific Coast Highway. Because of course she did. But this episode isn't really about the extraordinary physical feats. It's about what happens when the person you've always been is no longer available to you, and who you discover when you stop trying to get her back. In this conversation, you'll discover how Risa went from grey sweatpants on the sofa to the start line of an epic bike journey, why receiving help used to feel like weakness and what changed that, and what success looks and feels like when you stop chasing the next big thing. Risa has also written a brilliant book, The Road Unpaved, Border to Border with a Brain Tumour and a Bike. And I cannot recommend it enough. Let's get into today's episode. I'm very delighted today to be joined by Risa August, who I'm not even going to go into it because you've got so many good things. I could be here for the next 10 minutes listing all of your accomplishments. So let's dive straight in. Risa, tell us your story.
Oh my goodness. Well, first, Jess, I'm so grateful to be here and to connect today. And you speak my language. So that's what drew me to you and your podcast. As far as my story goes, one of the most profound turning points in my life started in 2011. I had just completed my first Ironman race, and my friend asked me to go on a 500-mile bike tour with her around the state of Oregon. And I was like, oh, heck yeah, I'm in. And that kind of speaks to who I am. I love adventure and exploration and kind of anything intense, really. But when we were on this bike ride, I started noticing I couldn't recover. The days felt really difficult, and I wasn't sure I could get back on my bike the next day. And that was kind of the first thing I started noticing. Also, I started putting on weight rapidly, but I was a really rigid athlete. I was very specific about my diet and my training. And there were several other kind of strange things going on in my body, changes in bone growth in my teeth and my jaw and hair growth, you name it. There were wacky things happening. And so I started doing a little research, and I went to my doctor and I said, I think I might have a thyroid issue. And she did some blood work, and she's like, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. And I said, well, I don't know. I can't explain some of these issues. And she's like, you're probably overtraining or not drinking enough water. I was getting these really generic responses. So for 7 years, that's what I was dealing with. And I got really into CrossFit. I was incredibly strong, but again, putting on a lot of weight. There were things I couldn't explain. And so 7 years later, I started having severe headaches. And I was like, okay, there's something up here. And I went back to the doctor and said, hey, I'm having severe headaches. They never seem to go away. I'm only sleeping 2 hours a night. And she said, there's nothing wrong with you. You're probably overtraining. You're not drinking enough water. Your blood work's fine. And I asked again, I said, well, I'd like to rule anything out. Peace of mind for me is valuable. And she said, no, I don't think you need one. And besides, they're expensive. And so I sat there for a moment and, because doctors know, right? They know better. And then I said, order me the MRI. And 1 week later, I had one sentence email from her saying, you have an enlarged pituitary, go see an endocrinologist. And that was kind of
that was it after 7 years.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
And that was the start of me never, ever being the same human again.
Yeah. God. I'm a bit speechless. I obviously read your book, and we'll come to that, but I didn't realize it was 7 years. And part of me is thinking, like, is this because you're a woman? Because women typically tend to be ignored in the medical field, and I'm trying not to get very angry on your behalf, because I'm sure you've done all of that. But wow, I'm so sorry.
Yes, well, thank you. And it's interesting because I was someone that was really in tune with my body. Like I knew, and I never went to the doctor until I I've never did. I didn't even take painkillers. I was just as close to a purist without being a purist as I could be. I was very careful with how I handled my body. But with that said, I also was very aware of what was going on with my body. And so the fact that I was being told that, like, it didn't compute in my head, that I was told, no, you're fine. And I'm like, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. And so, and I know we'll probably get to this, but that kind of, I started learning that my story wasn't unique, that this was happening all the time. And so that kind of, catapulted me into the work I'm doing today. But yeah, it was extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
Knowing what you know and being told you're wrong.
You're so right, though, because we trust doctors. We assume that they've been to medical school and they've done the things and they've read the charts and the blood work is saying yes, and you're like, okay, well, and even just having to advocate for your own MRI is, yeah, there are words that are stronger than frustrating, but I won't use them today. Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And so you went to the endocrinologist.
Yes.
And that happened.
Yeah, and so I meet my endocrinologist, and it was a whole different ballgame. She was actually a very caring, compassionate person, listened to me thoroughly, and before I knew it, I was staring at an image of my skull and my brain on the computer screen, and she's pointing to this big gray blob, and she's like, this has to come out. And I'm like, wait, like, I don't even know what's happening yet.
So you've gone from like, your pituitary gland is enlarged to you need brain surgery. And you're like, hang on a minute, can someone just catch me up here?
Yes. So, and then she kept going. Oh, and I'm 99% sure I know what you have. And so like, I'm kind of trying to process this in my head. And I'm like, what do you mean? I have this brain tumor. And she said, well, you also have this disease. I'm sure one test will answer the question, but I'm pretty sure you have this disease called acromegaly. She was looking at like my hands and my feet and like all kinds of weird things. And I had no idea what was going on. But then after she just patiently explained it all to me. And afterwards, I remember thinking, like, I wasn't in shock. I wasn't worried. I wasn't, it was kind of surreal that I was going to be having to have brain surgery. It was more like I felt validated. There was like this relief of like, finally, like I knew it. I knew something was wrong. But at that time I thought, okay, well, let's just get this taken care of so I can get back to my life. Yeah. I had no idea that I would never be the same.
Can we just briefly talk about acromegaly? Is that how we pronounce it?
Yeah. Acromegaly, yes. Close, yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about it, because I know you're really big on raising awareness and you're a big advocate for explaining the signs to look out for, because not many people know about it, right?
Yes, yeah. So I remember it taking me like 6 weeks to figure out how to pronounce the darn name,
Okay, I don't
but
feel
and I know the two words together, acro and megaly, Latin for something I can't remember, but yeah. So essentially, what the massive tumor on the pituitary gland does, it basically throws the pituitary gland out of whack. And so it's like everything's out of control hormonally. And for people who don't know, the pituitary gland is the control center of the body. So anything and everything that happens within you is most likely a result of how your pituitary is functioning. And so the bone changes, my teeth and jaw changes, hair growth, moods, weight gain, all of that. And so what acromegaly does, because there's several diseases that are associated with these pituitary tumors, I happen to have acromegaly. It basically dumps excessive growth hormone into your body. And when I put it kind of in lay terms, I like to think of it as, think of dumping, like being on steroids, and for a while you're strong, you're looking great, you're feeling great, but then suddenly you notice it just starts changing and destroying your body. It becomes a very toxic and probably even deadly scenario. So that's a little bit what this does. The growth hormone in your body isn't regulated. So I've been growing for as long as I've had this, which could have been well over a decade. These tumors are very hard to diagnose, and oftentimes people have them for 10, 15, 20 years before they find them. And so with that said, it changes your bone structure, so your joints don't fit together properly anymore. It changes your tissue growth, your features. Everything is continuing to grow, essentially. So again, it's like, oh, it doesn't sound so bad. But if you think of it, over time, your organs are growing, everything's growing, and it becomes extremely destructive and difficult for acromegaly patients to function. And it causes a slew of other complications as well. But anyways, it's called a rare disease, but it's believed to not be rare. These tumors are actually believed that 1 in 5 people are walking around with them.
Wow.
And had my doctor listened to me sooner, I might have had a very different trajectory. And again, they're difficult to diagnose. So that's kind of what prompted me to set out to change this. Like, this has got to change and hopefully get people diagnosed earlier.
I'm so sorry. Like, that must be incredibly frustrating, the fact that you could have had a very different experience. And we'll talk about what your experience has been in a minute. But to know that, have you spoken to that doctor since?
I thought of every scathing email I could possibly send to her. I definitely fired her as my doctor right away. I never went back to see her. But I just wasn't sure what that was going to accomplish. And then I met another acromegaly patient who is very extremely active in the kind of pituitary endocrine world. And he travels the world speaking and talking and a part of different research projects and such. And so he kind of became a mentor to me. He kind of like taught me the ropes of this disease and how to navigate the medical system and all of that. And he said, think of it this way, Risa, we need these people on our side. Yeah, so you can keep going and being angry, or we can work together to change it. And that really stuck with me. I was like, you know what? Changing it is more important to me than I figured out. I went to therapy and counseling to release the anger and all that. So that really stuck with me. And I never sent her an email, but I've never spoken to her again either.
Yeah. And completely to change tack, because also, like, you are such an extraordinary woman. Like, we need to talk about how on earth you got into Ironman, because that's not something that most people just pick up. So how did that come about?
Yes, well, and this speaks to kind of a lot of what you speak to. Like I was always striving for the next thing, more, 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 more. And so I remember someone telling me to try a sprint Ironman sometime, you know.
Sprint Ironman. What is a sprint
I'm
Ironman?
sorry, a sprint
I was
triathlon.
going to
Sorry about
say.
that. Yeah, and so I was like, oh, okay, that sounds like fun. So my first one, I knew nothing about it. I was an awkward beginner, but I was hooked, but I couldn't stop there. I had to gradually work my way up, and then I remember meeting some other athletes, and they're like, oh, you should try an Ironman, and I was like, I don't know if I could ever do that, and and I ended up doing two, and I was working on my third one when I was getting diagnosed. But again, it kind of speaks to my drive to constantly get to the next thing, like the bigger thing, the higher thing, whatever that is. And anyways, but cool bucket list thing to check off my list.
Very few people can say they've done an Ironman, so well done. Amazing.
Thank you.
So going back to endocrinologist, she's like, we're going to take this out. You're like, okay, well, let's just, I can really resonate with that sort of, right, we'll just get this done and then I'll move on and then that'll be the end of that kind of thing. Wasn't quite how it happened. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so following my brain surgery, we learned that they couldn't get the entire tumor out. And so that meant radiation treatment and medications for the rest of my life. I think there was a part of me that still thought, okay, I got this, but it's an interesting place to be. It's almost like I woke up after surgery and I was in this body I didn't recognize. It wasn't functioning the same. Cognitively, my brain and my body weren't connecting. So if in my brain I was like, oh, I need to turn right, my body would go left. Or if I was typing on the computer an email and I'd look up at the screen, it would be garbled, like letters and numbers, and it wasn't anything I thought I was typing in my head. So things just weren't connecting. And the fatigue was immense, the weakness, it just really took me down. I wasn't expecting that. I thought, I actually had a 250-mile bike ride scheduled. It was a biking event scheduled 6 weeks post brain surgery. And my neurosurgeon thought I was crazy, but that's in my brain.
So you were.
I was like, yeah, well, okay. I just need to get back on my bike. And I just quickly learned that I was barely able to get out of bed. Like that wasn't going to happen.
That must have been a really challenging time, like thing to come to terms with when, your body's just not behaving as you expect it to be. It must have taken some real grit to come to terms with that reality.
Yes, it's a process, like so many things, because I felt it was like coming to terms with, wait a minute, you mean to tell me I'm never going to be that person I always was? Like it was, I couldn't wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
And I was trying so hard to be that person. I was trying to be the person, I soon learned I was trying to be the person that everyone else needed me to be and wanted me to be. But I certainly had to go through my own grief as well, of letting go of who I always was. It's a really strange journey through that.
Yeah, I can imagine. And, I'm curious about the shedding of that persona because, as you just said there, like so many of us become the people who we're expected to be without even necessarily realizing that's what's happening. And in shedding that version of Risa, like the woman who's risen up now, what's your relationship like with her?
Gosh, I have to say, like, something that stuck with me was the rebellious part of me.
Amazing.
And I've come to adore her. Because I used to be such a rule follower and a people pleaser. My rebellious side came out and said, okay, if I can't be this person I always was, then who can I be? And I'm going to show the world and myself, that I'm going to do it my way. It's going to be my way. I'm going to be me, my way. And so there was a whole lot of unfolding in that. And even to this day, I'm still stepping into who I am more and more all the time. And it's been a wonderful process when you come to that place of acceptance, but then openness of like, okay, then if not that, then what now?
I love that. I really love that. So, I mean, we've not even covered half of it yet. You had the surgery, you were stuck in bed, and then you decided to sign up for another challenge.
Yes, so I'm confined to my living room sofa pretty much, and I had been wearing these gray sweatpants for months and months, and they're hanging off of me. And I really remember having this very clear moment laying on that couch or sofa and thinking, I cannot sit here binge watching another episode, like another Netflix show, or like I couldn't do that. And again, it had to be some fire inside me. I realized I needed something to live for. I needed something to strive for. And I always was goal oriented. So, and maybe my goals had to change, but it really just opened me up. So that same day, I started, I was really in this reflective place, and I started looking at all the things and thinking about all the things I said I was going to do someday. And here I was like, wait a minute, well, when is someday? And that was the day I decided I was going to ride my bike from Canada to Mexico down the Pacific coast. And no time like the present. And so I signed up for a tour that same day, and I had 14 months to figure out how I was going to get off the couch and get to the Canadian border. And again, at that time, I had no idea. My body was so foreign to me, so I had no idea how I was going to make that happen. I just knew I had to.
I love that your first challenge post surgery was over 1,800 miles on a bike. Could have done a 5K. No. We're gonna go all in, and I think you're so right. There's so many people wander around with these bucket lists, and that's all they ever are. They're just lists. They never become reality. And you looked at yours and you're like, right, okay, we'll tick this one off then. And you did. You did the ride.
Yes.
And what an incredible experience.
Yes, my gosh. And it was quite a process. And for the listeners, I just want to kind of explain, I didn't just get on my bike again. I had to get off the couch. I had to get out of those sweatpants. I remember walking to the mailbox for the first time was a big deal, and it felt really hard. And I remember I had to figure out a way to not go back to that couch, to not go back to that mindset. The sofa is just more of that metaphor of being stuck, right? So I actually started painting. I still physically didn't feel or mentally feel ready for my bike yet. So I started painting, and it was more like this mindfulness practice to keep me in this place of moving forward, this place of feeling productive and forward motion. And then I started gifting my art to people, and then I started selling it around the world. And And again, it was this healing stepping stone for me through that process. And then the first time I got on my bike, probably 4 or 5 months post, like after I signed up for that ride, I was only biking in my basement for 5 minutes at a time. It was really, really a long process, but I had to start somewhere.
I really like the concept of actually like finding the stepping stones and actually knowing that the worst thing you could have done was to stay on the couch. And even though like you didn't necessarily have the strength to get on the bike, you were doing something different. And I think there's a real mindset around I can't. Like if oh, I can't, like, and actually I think almost anyone can do anything within, limits and stuff, but you have to be willing to take sometimes the micro steps in the middle to get there. And you said, and I really resonate with this, the kind of before you was bigger, better, grander, longer, harder, and actually like I can imagine that sort of finding those tiny milestones must have been really hard, but also like because of the way that you work, like you can sort of right, okay, well the mailbox is day 1 and day 2 might be the end of the road, and just building on that momentum.
Absolutely, beautifully said. I really did learn to have more patience with myself and more patience with other people. It's been such a humbling experience. And also letting go of like that perfectionism or perfectionist attitude about those steps. The steps and the process isn't going to be perfect. And some days I may be back on the couch or I may be back in those sweatpants. But then suddenly you're never looking back. But having that grace and patience and compassion, again, something new for me, because it was, like you said, it was all about grit and like grinding and driving through. And now it's like, wait a minute, let's pause.
Yeah. And then on the start line, and I know you do talk about this in the book, sort of facing down over 1,800 miles. What was going through your head?
What am I doing here was a big question. There really was this metaphorical moment. Like when I was looking back at the Canadian border, it was blue skies. They had their Canadian flag designed in a flower bed. So it was like red and white petunias, and it was beautiful, and it was beautifully curated, and the grass was so green, and there's this big, beautiful white peace arch there, and everyone's snapping photos, and I'm annoyed with everyone around me, and because this was supposed to be my personal journey. And then you look to the south, the direction we're going, and the American flag flower bed, some of the flowers were dying, and it just kind of looked not as well curated, and it was all dark clouds, and just like, oh my gosh, that's what we're heading into. And I remember thinking, all I have to do is get on and pedal. I don't have to talk to anyone. I don't have to be friends with anyone. I just have to pedal. And so, yeah, that speaks to a little bit of kind of my attitude and how I started the trip. And it ends very differently. But yeah, that's a little bit where I was.
And I think it's so interesting, isn't it? I think when you do have a personal challenge, it's a lot easier to go inwards and just kind of, okay, right, like this is about me and I can focus on myself. And sometimes, I think we talked about this, like small talk for me is, and so actually like a group of strangers, I actually think one of my favorite chapters in the book was the one where you were like, can we say fuck yet? And I was just like, yes! Oh my God. There is a moment where when you meet someone new and you're like, okay, can I just test the waters here? And you swear and you see them flinch and you're like, oh, you're never going to be my person. Or at least that's for me. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. You know, like,
Yes.
we're not going to be tight, but that's okay.
Yes, I love that.
And I just loved it. I was like, oh my God, yes. Like this, I feel like this is like the litmus test for all my future friendships. Like, are you good with fuck? Okay, cool. You're not. Okay, right. Wait, you don't say, okay, you don't say that word. Right, cool. That's okay. We don't need to be friends. Fine.
Exactly. It was, I think we were like 5 days to a weekend. I can't remember exactly, and it's just raining and cold every day. And, and we're camping in this and about a group of 5 people, in the beginning, they were all full of ego and how fast can everyone pedal? And in my mind, I was like, I'm doing it Risa's way. I don't care how far ahead people are. I don't care if I'm last. Like, it didn't matter to me. And just for the listeners, there was 10 of us on this ride. And so I think about 5 days in, people kind of caught on with, wait a minute, we're going to follow Risa. And I remember
that.
Exactly. I didn't care about being fast, or I just wanted to make it. And I just remember standing around in the rain, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to stop and get a snack. You guys keep going. I was actually trying to get rid of people the whole time. I just wanted to be alone. But everyone's like, well, we're going to all stop too. We want a snack too. So I'm like, ugh. So we're standing around, and we happen to be in the backwoods of Washington State, and we're next to a clear cut, and it wasn't very pretty, and it's pouring rain, and it's cold, and everyone's just being polite still. And I'm just like, this sucks, you guys. Like, can't we just like call it like it is? Like, on one hand, yes, we're lucky to be on this tour and it's amazing. But on the other hand, it flipping sucks, So I just got fed up with the politeness, and I'm just like, can we just say fuck already? Because I'm getting tired of it. And so everyone, I saw a big exhale from everyone. They were just like, oh, finally. That's kind of the beauty of a brain tumor. You get to a point where nothing is that big a deal. And if people think it's a big deal, well, then, like you said, then you're not my person and I'm not yours. And that's okay.
Do you talk about the fact that obviously you're doing the ride, but on top of the ride, you're also having to get medication en route, and because you're still dealing with these symptoms. It's not like, you trained and then they went away and then it was all good. You're still managing your condition. And I guess had it become a part of your life at that point, or was that quite frustrating to have to do that on top of when everyone else was like having a rest day or whatever, and you're there like, okay, I've got to go and sort this out now?
Yes, I wasn't sure. Again, I wasn't sure how my body was going to respond, and it was a newer medication, so insurance here in the States, they make you go through. You have to follow different tiers of medication. And if they don't work, then you go to the next one. So even if all studies point to this drug has like zero efficacy, you still have to try it and before you can move to the next one. And so this was kind of a learning experience for me. So I was on a new injection, and it was a very complicated one. I think we think, oh, okay, you just stick a needle in you and you go. No. These medications are very expensive. They have to be handled very specifically. They have to be reconstituted very specifically. They have to be injected specifically. And medical professionals don't always deal with these kind of more complicated injections and medications. So when you're dealing with people who don't know how to handle them, that becomes a very stressful point. And so I had to get 2 injections during the 6 weeks I was on my ride. And the first one went completely haywire and didn't work out at all in a positive manner. And so it was very stressful, and it was very stressful to think, because that first one was on my rest day, and I had to coordinate it. I had to coordinate shipping these medications to specific points, that I would be throughout the ride, and had to make sure, I'd call them a million times to make sure, like, this is how it has to be handled. It has to go right into the refrigerator. You can't freeze it, can't leave it out too long. And if you're talking to medical professionals that aren't tired and overworked and want to accommodate, that's great. If you're talking to ones that are having a bad day or just feel worn out, then it's hit or miss. So needless to say, the first one didn't go well at all.
But you made it, and you got through the 1,850 miles total?
Yeah, 45 to be exact, but
okay,
yes.
Right. What had changed for you from the start line to the finish line?
It's interesting. I started, allowing myself to connect with these other 9 people on the ride, which is really funny to say, because connection, deep connection, like you, no time for small talk, like deep connection. Let's just dive in. That's like my top value, or my second top value. It's so valuable and important to me. And here I was shutting these people out. And I also learned that people genuinely care. My whole life I was doing it my way. I was doing it on my own. I wouldn't say my way, but I was doing it on my own. Like, I can handle it. Risa can handle it. She can do it all. And I never wanted to lean on anyone, and in my old mindset, that was weakness, to ask for help or to need support. But one of my biggest nemesis on the trip he turned out to be my biggest advocate. And I'm going to start crying thinking about it, but he and I are still very good friends to this day and have stayed in touch. But again, just a big lesson in opening up, receiving help, and also things aren't always going to go according to plan. I thought by the end of my trip, I'd have all my answers, and my soul would be and heart would be healed, and I would have it figured out. And I didn't. I had more challenges to face after that. But now I felt more equipped. Somehow I felt more like ready to take them on. And so, so the road really became a metaphor. The road isn't always what it seems, and it comes with twists and turns and potholes and detours, and it's rarely ever smooth. So lots of learning. I'm still learning.
But I think that's the thing. It's a lifelong journey, right? Regardless of where you're at and what's gone on. And I really resonate with the notion that, like, you go somewhere for a specific period of time, regardless of what you're doing, and you kind of think, I'm going to figure this out in that time. I did a 3-week trek through the Himalayas and was like, while I'm there, I'm going to figure some serious shit out. And actually, what I figured out is that mountain sickness is not that much fun, and I probably should have packed lighter. And I, again, like, came back a very different person, but also I went with this huge expectation on this trip of it being like, it's gonna, solve all these things I've got going on, and that doesn't happen.
But like you said, it's all a part of learning and growth, and it's almost like I did a trip across northern Spain. I biked across northern Spain on the Camino, about 500 miles on the Camino, and it challenged me. I mean, from head to toe, but not even physically. Like, everything about it was hard. And I remember I couldn't wait. I was going to quit so many times, and I couldn't wait till this bike trip was over. And and there's that side of me that's like, but Risa, you love biking and you do hard things, and that's who you are. But what I gleaned from that trip was, I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to be that person anymore. What am I trying to prove? Who am I really doing it for? And I realized it wasn't really for me. And so people will say to me, like, oh, do you regret doing that trip because it was so hard? And I'm like, no way. No way. And like you were saying about your Himalaya trip, like, I'm still so glad I did it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there is a lot of peace in the realization that you can stop. And that's not to say that you stop forever, but there's peace in knowing that actually it's okay to do half a set when you're in the gym, or do a 10-kilometer ride rather than a 300. And I think you're so right. Like, when you start asking yourself, whose voice is this? And if it's not for you, sometimes it is for you, and then great, do the 300 miler, crack on. Sometimes it's like, no, today it's a sofa and it's a hot chocolate and it's whatever trash is on TV. And I think there's peace in that, but it's a very challenging thing to get to when you are someone who is driven, and particularly, this is just me personally, but like very driven by achievement and doing and ticking things off. And then, when you sort of stop that, you're like, and learning how to rest, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I thought that trip across northern Spain was the next thing. Like, how am I going to top the Pacific Coast Highway? And again, big learning. Like, no, I don't need to do the next big thing anymore. I'm doing all these wonderful next big things, but they're like perusing the farmer's market on a Sunday. Oh my gosh, there's so much joy in that. That just fulfills me so much. Yeah. So it just shifts, it changes. And so there's something really freeing about that. And again, it's like this big exhale, like I get to do this. I get to choose how I move forward.
And that's huge. Realizing the choice is yours that's the shit. We have meandered all over the place. What does success mean to you now?
Ooh, gosh, it's interesting because old me would have like defined it with all these words and accomplishments, and now it's more of a feeling. Yeah. You know how when things just align and it just feels good and it feels right?
Yeah.
That's what success is for me. And that could mean, I don't know, taking myself on a trip to the city and, heading up a bunch of art studios and taking myself to lunch, and everything just aligns, like the parking aligns, and I find the perfect gift or treat, and the breakfast is delicious, and I meet a cool person, and it was just, the day just flowed. Like, it sounds so simple.
No, it's beautiful.
But gosh, to me, that feels successful. That feels like, I just stayed open to having a wonderful day today.
And I think that's the thing. I'm not sure which philosopher said how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. But, if you can't find joy, if you can't appreciate success in the everyday, then you're never going to find it. Like, it's not on top of a mountain. It's not at the end of a race. It's internal. And I think there's real beauty in finding that.
Yes, that's beautifully said, and because that's what I was doing. I kept chasing the next thing. You're never going to get there. You're never going to get there.
But some people never realize that their whole lives.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We've talked a lot about the barriers and challenges that you've had to overcome. Were there any others?
Oh, gosh. I mean, there were really so many. I was changing as a person, inside and out. And so that meant my whole life around me was changing. They always say, if you change, the people around you can't help but change. And that doesn't necessarily always mean for the better, Yeah. So it was inevitable. Things around me were changing, and I was facing a divorce after 18 years of marriage. And it's interesting because I deeply loved my ex-husband, but I was realizing I wasn't the same person anymore. And then I fell in love with a woman, which was completely new territory for me. And I came from a generation where that wasn't quite acceptable yet. So I was facing all the kind of dialogue in my head around that and around what I learned growing up. And but I was more curious about it than anything. But nonetheless, it was still challenging to navigate. Again, it was new territory for me, and so those were all hard things as well.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think what I find so inspiring about you is your willingness to stay open to all the different things that come your way, like the golden thread of curiosity throughout throughout your story, right? And just, willing to, whilst you're saying the thoughts that are arising, it's like, okay, right, well, that's interesting. And being able to greet those with grace and curiosity rather than fear, I think is a really unique way of living. So
Thanks for saying that. Thanks for saying that. Thank you.
Oh, I love this question. What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh my gosh, so much. There's so much. One, nothing's that big a deal. And it's not that you shouldn't care. There's always a way. So if you feel blocked or stuck, as opposed to, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world. Like, what do I do now? It's not that big a deal. It either wasn't meant for you, you were meant to go in a different direction, something else better is going to come along. So imagine if we looked at a lot of our, much of our life that way, and spent less energy on, oh my gosh, like what am I going to do now? And focus more on, okay, what am I going to do instead? Or what next? Or how do I need to shift? Or how do I need to look at this differently? And so, again, that openness, that is so freeing. Also, have fun. Oh my gosh. I was so serious and rigid about my life for so long. Now, if I can, any chance I get to wear a tutu or dance or go do paint art or do some fun trips or explore, I'm in. Have fun. Go have fun. I just spent, again, too much time taking life too seriously, taking myself too seriously, taking everything in my life too seriously. So make sure you have some fun, for sure.
I do think there's almost I also have to remind myself to have fun. I think it's not something that we are necessarily taught. It's you go to school, you do the exams, you get the grades, you go to university for some people, or you go to work and then you progress, but actually having fun isn't that just the whole point?
Yes, and life experiences, we were talking about, your Himalaya trip and my Spain trip. I've learned the most by going out and experiencing it. And yes, I want it to always be fun, and sometimes it's not. But oh my gosh, I've evolved so much more as a person going out and doing it, and as opposed to sitting in a classroom or sitting at a desk, or not saying that those things aren't important and don't have their place, but gosh, I've just evolved so much by getting out there and doing life.
And you need both. I agree. Yeah, cool. It's important to do the school thing. It's important to do the work thing. Obviously, we all need money to live, but I think it can be really easy to lose sight of the importance of that balance. Yeah. My word of the year actually this year is balance, because it's something that I often will just forget, and I'm like, crap, I did it again.
Oh, well, tell us, what are some ways you're creating more balance in your life?
Just not over planning. So there was a point in COVID, just before COVID actually, where every morning I was doing CrossFit at 6 a.m. and then I'd go to work and just work crazy hours, and then almost every evening I had something on. So whether it was seeing friends for dinner or going to some sort of event or and I kind of, when COVID happened and we weren't allowed to see anyone, or we weren't allowed to do anything, we weren't allowed to leave the house, I found myself feeling really relieved, and I was like, this isn't right. And obviously it was scary and all of, and I know COVID was a horrible time for a lot of people, but there was just this sense of, I don't have to go anywhere or do anything. And, and it's very much a personality trait of mine to just go and just keep going. And then it's no coincidence I've had at least 3 burnouts. And so actually just learning that like I've got to pump the brakes before, and, you know, just not going, yeah, cool. Like, okay, well, I'll see you on Tuesday and you on Wednesday and you on No, that's just not. And there's a sense of guilt that comes with that is like, you know, I'm like, oh, well, I'm not seeing my friends. But if I'd turned up, you know, having seen 3 nights on the trot, and then I'm there and I'm physically there, but mentally I'm like, why am I here? I'm like counting down, like, oh, right, the trains, I've got to go, like, and so it's not fun for anyone when I turn up in that headspace. So just trying to be kinder to myself. I don't know who I was trying to impress or appease or whatever with this incredibly full schedule.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't having a nice time. I don't think I realised I wasn't having a nice time until it gone away, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. What a relief.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I guess that's one gift that you took from the pandemic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what permission you'd like to give others through your story.
The permission I'd like to give others is you get to choose. You get to choose how you move forward in your life. It's your choice, whether you realize it or not, whether you believe it or not. It truly is. Your perspective is your choice. Checking things off your bucket list is your choice. It's all your choice. You just might have to tilt your lens a little bit and look at it from a different angle. So yeah, you get to choose.
I really love that, especially the tilting of the lens. Sometimes the bucket list looks different when you get there, and you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
What a beautiful conversation. Risa, are you ready for quick fire?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I might be a deer in headlights, but let's go for
I
it.
believe in you. I think you've got this. One word to describe your current relationship with success.
Oh. Collaborative.
I love it. Your non-negotiable boundary that protects you from burnout.
Oh, saying no.
So much harder than it would seem. What does rest look like for you?
Ooh. It actually looks like doing something I'm passionate about. Painting, or I love anything creative. Even creating like a social media post on Canva or something. Anything about like creating.
Love that. I love that so much. One thing you wish more people knew about building a sustainable career or lifestyle.
It doesn't all have to be done right now. Like, it doesn't all have to happen right now.
Yeah, that really hit me. Ooh, goosebumps. The success metric that matters to you most.
Oh. Am I happy with it? Like, how does it feel to me? Yeah.
And finally, what makes you feel most successful as fuck?
I love it. Gosh, when I am in my true authenticity, and that means like when I dress in my most colorful, fun outfit and wear my favorite earrings and high tops, and I feel unapologetic and confident, that feels like success for me.
I love that so much. Risa, thank you so much. I want to talk about the book. So Risa has written a book. It's called The Road Unpaved, Border to Border with a Brain Tumour and a Bike. And it is bloody brilliant. So I would 10 out of 10 recommend that. Where do we find you, Risa?
You can find me on my website, risaaugust.com. That's RISA, August, just like the month. And I have all things Risa on there. So yeah, check it out. And your support means the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else you want to leave us with before we wrap up?
Choose you. Just choose you.
Beautiful.
And thank you. Thank you so much. I'm
Thank you so much.
happy to connect today. Thank you.
This is such a beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much for listening, and a huge thank you to Risa for her openness today. The thing that stayed with me most is the image of Risa on the couch in the grey sweatpants who couldn't get to the mailbox. And instead of forcing herself back onto the bike, she picked up a paintbrush. That tiny pivot, that willingness to find any kind of forward motion, is what eventually got her to a start line 1,845 miles long. And her definition of success now? A day that just flows. Parking that works out, a good breakfast, a nice conversation with a stranger. After a decade of Ironman and bike tours, that's what it comes down to, finding joy in the everyday. If that landed for you, please share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, leave a review. It genuinely helps more people find the show. You can find Risa and her book at risaaugust.com. That's RISA August.com. I'll see you next week on Successful AF.